So this is pretty much how I sketch. Well, this is not actually it. Well, yeah, this is actually it, but this is how I actually sketch, right? And you have some scribbles here. So let's go some render view so that we can see it clearer what's happening. So this is how it looks like when I'm quote unquote sketching. Like again, I don't do thumbnails, but I do sketch in Blender by doing blockouts because that's way more natural to me nowadays. And again, this is just another kind of my process that I use. Sometimes I would model the whole thing and find the shots, but because I already have like a pretty clear concept like shot in mind here, I just went ahead and realized it. And let me walk you through that thought. So the thing that's pretty clear in my mind is I want to do something like not unlike this one, right? With the theme of a T shape in the middle. And it changed a little bit towards the end, right? I don't mind that, but I started with having, okay, I want to have a character in the middle, some house in the back, and I have a muddy ground, and then the lighting is gonna be overcast, and then the mud's gonna be wet, and there's some people in it to make some rhythm with it. That's pretty much already happening inside my head, and those of you who took my mentorship will know that that's how I basically work. And those who worked with me before would would say that also like the drawback of that process obviously is sometimes when it translates from your mind into 3D it doesn't really translate well, and you need to do some improvisation, but that that fluency will come with practice, like, at least for me, right? And I would say that I have a like a much better control of it for now. I like now that's why I was able to do this kind of thing. But anyways, the theme is this. I want to have like the same T-shaped theme with character in the middle, overcast, really clear silhouette, and stuff like that. Like that's the whole theme. So then I went ahead and placed some assets. I think this was a blockout, right? Place some assets in, and then voila, I got this like with some HDRI from HDRI Haven here, Gaffer, and that's it, right? Now, to move on from here, right? What I would make sure, like, why this blockout is important is for me to really settle down. First of all, the vibe that I want, like the approximation of the vibe that I'm gonna achieve, right? Or at least try to achieve, and then the arrangement of shapes, because in the end of the day, that's the most important thing about creating an image. Is in the end of the day, it's just about shapes, right? So I would arrange a shape as good as I can. And I think in the end, I darkened this part also so that the shape is clearer, readable. So that's that. And then after I have this, let's say I lock this down, and how I do assets even, I would make sure that the asset will follow my composition plan. It's not the other way around. I will try to not have the asset dictate what I want, because like that's my biggest pet peeve with my own work and many work I've seen online is we let our assets do too much for us, while it should be the other way around. The asset should amplify us. It shouldn't make us, like, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, I don't mean to offend, lazy, right? So let's say, okay, I have these shapes here. Now I'm trying to fill them with not shapes, like with assets, okay? So let's say I have this assets from JAMA here. Big, medium, small, pretty popular, pretty good set of libraries. Let's add them in, let them load, and now I'm placing them here. Okay, this is a beautiful asset, but it doesn't really match our shape, doesn't it? Right? So then, instead of just giving up and, okay, this asset's beautiful, I'll let the asset do the work for me. No. Like, I think it's worth it to even, like, you'll see in the final results here, which I have in Photoshop. Like, even this one, I couldn't find an asset that looks exactly like this. So what I did was I don't try to find another asset, because I already have all this paste. So, and you will see in the later video too, in the time lapse, I'll just disassemble some of this model and then just build my own. right? Because that what asset should be. It shouldn't be the end point. It should be the starting point, if anything. So again, with this one, then okay, it doesn't really adhere to the shape that I want. Well, all right, well, I can always cut it in half, like what I did with this one. Like this, basically this barn asset right here, right? This is basically the, yeah, I've already been cut in half, but this is basically a barn asset like this with some triangle on top, but I just cut it down and then I pushed it back a little bit so that, why did I do that? Because I wanted to not fuck around with the arrangement that I already have, right? So that's how I think because the worst thing that you can do when you have all these shapes arranged is to spill the juice, right? And spilling the juice can come from the over reliance of assets that doesn't really match your composition, or just you forgetting stuff like me. I forget stuff often. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind too. Once you have a good arrangement, fight tooth and nail to not lose the juice. So let me show you another example from my own older personal work. All right, so this is also a personal work that I did like a while ago. I think it's 2 years ago. Oh no, last year. Okay, so this is basically the whole concept of the thing. This is what happens in my head when I'm imagining this scene for the first time that I want to do. Okay, I want some path going into the distance, like creating a nice curve, and I want another curve below to show depth and also to show some river to lead the eye into the eventually statue here. Right? I know that I don't have the statue yet here, but I already am imagining it, that there's gonna be a statue. That's why it leads here. Right? And when you see the final, it's not really exactly the same, but it still really is, kind of, right? I still have the curve, although it's now from a different angle, because I want to emphasize the scale of the statue, so I switched the lens size. And then there's another curve from the river to show the depth and, to lead the eye as well. And then I expanded that motif by having this shape pointing here, having this tree blocking your eye and then pointing back into the statue. So that's how I think, I hope that's clear now that I've shown you this example, right? Not spilling the juice and not letting your asset like dictate things for you. I think it's a really, really good thing if you're leveraging assets like me, like a lot like me. It can be like a black hole that sucks you in if you're not, trying hard to keep at least some of you in it and use your assets creatively, use it as a starting point and not the end point. Okay? So, yeah, that's about that. In the next chapter, I'll walk you through how I place the assets, like the ground assets, but basically it's the same kind of thinking, but yeah, I'll just walk you through anyways, because I think there's something to to share on that front. So yeah, that's it for this part of the course, and I'll see you again in the next part of the video.